I don't even know if this is a big test anymore. The Kentucky Wildcats 6-4. This game is interesting because it is in Lexington. It is at Kroger Field for the Wildcats. They are home, and Georgia's 22.5 point favorite. Fresh, I'll hand the ball, turn and hand the ball off to you, man. Georgia, Kentucky. I kind of feel like I'm leading into the same as Illinois and Michigan here. You see any way the Wildcats can pull this off?
Well, I think the first thing is, does Georgia, do the players and coaches come in with a complacency? Do they overlook them? Do they overlook them and Georgia Tech and focus on LSU already? Like, where's that mindset at? Um, do injuries catch up? They've had some guys banged up all year. There's some players who haven't even played, in 6, 7 weeks. Guys who've been playing somewhat hurt. Um, do you play them early on? And if the game is out of control, you rest them. But do you unfortunately maybe run the risk of having to play them and get hurt or getting beat up in a game if you don't put it away early? That the guys are playing extra snaps they shouldn't have. This is a game that you just sort of you need to focus on, get it done. It's going to be a physical beat up, game. It's not going to be the offense you've seen the past few weeks of 4 receivers in the field spreading it out, slinging the ball up and down the field. This is going to be a grinded out Rodriguez smoke in the backfield. Will Levis play action a little bit, and throwing to Robinson every once in a while. That passing attack for Kentucky is nothing to stick at. They struggled with Vanderbilt. Maybe you see them come out with a little more fire, but it's not the same Kentucky offensive line, or they call it the Big Blue Wall, as it's been the past few years. They had 3 guys get drafted last year, and they have not recovered and been able to make up for those 3 players that got drafted and cover those losses on the line. There's pass rush has been there. The running holes have not been there fully. Um, the Kentucky defense even hasn't been as explosive, as lethal as it been the past few years. It's kind of like that one bridge gap year where we expected them to build off what they had and continue to climb. There's talent there, obviously in Lexington. Stoops has done a great job, but it's teetering on. Does the team just quit, or is they just haven't got there yet? Injuries catching up with them. I don't know. It's going to be a tough one to sell, but Stoops is a fantastic coach, and there's players with pride. They will try to show up, and nothing better to pull off an upset on senior day over the number 1 team in the country and really throw a major wrench into the college football playoff. There's a lot to play for Kentucky as being the upset, cats, and you're getting after it. But I'm kind of focused, back on Georgia, where it's a complacency thing of like, oh, here we go. They're not ranked anymore. We already got ourselves a spot in Atlanta. Do we play us tough in this football game? Now, if you look back at what happened versus Mississippi State or even versus Florida, there was turnovers and they get sloppy. They build a lead and they get sloppy, build a lead and get sloppy. Whether it's punt returns, whether it's interceptions, fumbles, they haven't played a clean game very much this season, and they've still been able to beat teams by 20-plus points. You get into a playoff team where you have to rematch versus Tennessee later on, you don't get that luxury. So they have to take this game seriously and focus of where do we have to get better at, where do we have to fine tune, and take the game, because anything can happen on any kind of play. And you don't want this to become a real ball game in the fourth quarter where you're trying to get healthy, you're trying to work on stuff, and you're trying to get focused. You want to control and dominate the football game. You don't want to give any other committee member, any other team in the country, any inkling to hope that, this team is vulnerable, we can take them. You have to come out and show your dominance and not give up, not give an inch to a Kentucky football team. If it becomes an ugly ball game in a fourth quarter, you never know how the ball is going to bounce, and things can happen crazy. You need to take control of the football game and get it done. And even like from the coaching perspective, of make sure you are locked in as well. Just because you're playing a team that you might think on paper or on film is lesser, you cannot coach scared or coach complacent. You need to coach like you're playing Tennessee or Oregon or Ohio State or Michigan. You have to be able to coach as well as your players play. And there's been some coaching miscues for that Mississippi State game that I think they need to work on. There's no reason why you should have come out and thrown the ball 3 times and tried to score with 45 seconds. You run the ball out, get to the locker room, build off the 10-point lead, and move on. Like even things like that, play calling, staying focused and not losing that goal of winning a conference championship and playing in the college football playoff. That's your goal, but you have to get there and be perfect. So that's, I think, it's the biggest test is, looking at, you want to be like Alabama. You want to build the standard of being Alabama. What Bama did during their run, and even currently now, they are playing almost, even with struggles, they still play every football game to the utmost of their ability, and they are there in the fourth quarter either dominating or finding ways to win football games. You cannot let a game that or a no show on the schedule become a problem for you, and that's where I think Georgia has to take the next step of being dominant week in and week out and instilling their will, and showing that they are the standard of the SEC. And it's not Alabama anymore. I think that's the biggest challenge. Where will this team, mindset wise, move forward? I think the Dogs win, but I'm looking forward to seeing, are they better in every area of the football game? Do they tackle better? Are they more focused? And also be on the lookout for crazy trick plays from Kentucky. They're going to pull at every stop. And how do you adapt on another hostile road environment and find ways to win a football game?
So I was going through here, and I still am confused on how Will Levis is a top 10 quarterback prospect, especially with the kind of the games that he's kind of produced over the last few weeks here. It's not been good. He hasn't played good football in weeks here. He is prone to take a lot of sacks. He holds on to the football way too long for my liking, and I think that that's going to be a big problem for Kentucky. And this Georgia defense is, if I was me, I would come out blitzing two guys from jump. I would go six on the pass rush, five in the back covering, and seeing if Will Levis can pick you apart. Like, put the ball in his hands, force him to beat you. You know, I know Rodriguez has kind of come back. The only thing with Georgia this year, fresh, and I'm going back to this, and I went through and I said, again, I'm trying to grasp at straws and talk myself into this game being competitive. So I went back and I look at Mississippi versus Mississippi State last week. It was 17-12 going into the half. Georgia was winning, but how they were playing in the first half was they struggled a little bit. They come out at halftime and they boat raped Mississippi State. You look at Tennessee. They're up 24, I think 3 at halftime against Tennessee, or 24-7. And then they only score 3 points in the second half. I know the weather came into play there in the second half against Tennessee. And then you take a look at Florida. They built a big lead at Florida, and then next thing you know, Florida rattles off a couple of touchdowns, and then Georgia remembers that they're the defending national champion and picks themselves off and runs it up against the Gators. It seems like this Georgia team needs to be punched in the mouth in a game. Like, they start winning, they get a lead, and then they take their foot off the gas, and they want to, like, they need someone to punch back. I need you to fight me back. Like, I can't just sit there and just pound away at you and just knock you out. And then I guess it's almost like a boredom thing. And maybe it leads into your point of saying, are you looking for, you're going to destroy Georgia Tech next weekend. Like, that's not even a game. Are you looking at LSU already and saying, okay, well, we got to beat LSU to get into the college football playoff, and you have something to play for there? This Kentucky game, the only thing you have to play for is pride. This is the only thing. This game means so much more to Kentucky than it does to Georgia. It really does. Because in my mind, I'm sitting there going, Kentucky could come in here if they, God forbid, a miracle happens, because they're going to need a miracle. They're going to need a lot of stuff. I know Kentucky's in the Bible Belt over there, so maybe all those guys are already praying for that. But if they pull off the miracle, they could sit there and say, all right, yeah, we didn't win. We're only a 7-win team this year, but we beat Georgia, and they can hang their hat on that. Outside of that, they're fresh. Like, that's me grasping. And I mean, I'm like grasping with my fingernails out here, trying to find something to talk about with Kentucky. I think the minute Kentucky punches Georgia in the mouth in this game, whether it be in the second quarter, whether it be in the third quarter, maybe Kentucky rattles off 10 points against Georgia at some point or another in this game. I think Georgia then goes, oh, wait. This isn't happening here. We're the Bulldogs here. We're on our way to being going to the college football playoff, looking like we're on our way to having a shot at being a back-to-back defending national champion. The only thing fresh, and I would like to see this more out of Georgia, is I know that the Edwards and the McIntosh and the Milton thing has really kind of helped them for it. I know that it's fresh there, but I would like to see them do a little bit more in the passing game. I know that they've spread the ball out. Brock Bowers and Washington are two phenomenal tight ends. I'm a huge fan of both of them. I think that they create matchup problems galore. But McConkey is the only wide receiver that has more than 25 catches. And I know you have two great tight ends. I would love to see them work a little more with the wide receivers, do some stuff a little bit more on the outside. I think that later on, come down the road, and I'm saying this not for just Kentucky, but something that you may need later down the road there. Like, okay, if we can take away your tight ends, are you able to throw the ball against a pass defense that takes away your tight ends here? Now, I don't know if many teams can take away Washington and Bowers. That would be a hefty ask. But again, trying to talk myself into things here. I got Georgia. I got Georgia big. I'm gonna say 3 touchdowns here.
Yeah, I mean, I think the passing game is one thing. They need to really get the guys healthy. Like Pierce Jackson came back last week, coming off some injuries. Keep him healthy. He's a clutch receiver to help balance out McConkey in the passing game. Get AD Mitchell back. Hasn't really played in 8 games. They are missing some guys, but finding creative ways to move the offense is also just it. It's something where you don't get predictable, and it keeps the guys on their toes. But yeah, they need to get a little more consistent with getting those receivers some reps. This week and next week are great opportunities because you are going to need it down the stretch when it's basically a one and done situation if you don't show up on game day.
Yeah. Fresh, before we move to our last game of the week here, and our game of the week, the biggest battle, the Battle of LA. Huge win going down up there in the Glass Bowl against the rivalry game, the Bowling Green Falcons and the Toledo Rockets. We previewed this game during our recap episode for our producer, Drew. Bowling Green with a touchdown with 9 seconds to go in the fourth quarter, pulling off the upset. And like I said, turn that rocket around, face it to Canada. Way to go, Falcons. Big win by Bowling
Wow.
Green. Big win.
Fighting Digital Drews, get it done.
I would like to see, I wonder if he's awake right now. Probably. I'm going to guess no, but I would love for him to be like texting us and be like, "Did you see this?" So, all right, Fresh.
That's awesome.
Let's go to our game of the week here, folks.